What if the epicness that we sometimes spend our entire lifetime searching for exists not in spite of the boulders, but thanks to the boulder version of you, that these boulders inspire you to become? Often, when we least expect it, life thrusts us into the role of the reluctant hero or hero in our own story. How we respond in those moments can be the difference between thriving or just surviving. We believe that our story will be determined by how we dare to answer one burning question: how to choose to live. Join us as we explore the mindset shifts, innovative strategies, and captivating stories from my own life experience and those of my truly epic guests. So let's get this started. So today is going to be a super, super special of the How to Choose to Live podcast. And I absolutely cannot wait to introduce you to this incredible individual and talk about stories. So I will share with you that I don't know if it was a chance meeting, because I don't necessarily believe in chance meetings, but it really was like a fairy tale introduction with this man. So early on after the boulder, Skylar and I had this passion of going places. I would love to get her out. And we ended up at this wonderful kind of market out in St. Petersburg, Florida, called Locale, being the foodies that we are. And I'm wheeling her around, and all of a sudden, I hear this voice from this tasting table, this young man who is there with his selection of the most delicious homemade tasting pasta sauces, spaghetti sauces that you've ever tasted. And he says, "Are you Meredith and Skylar?" And he had been following our story. And so now let's fast forward to the present. This man has taken what I believe, and we'll get all the juicy details literally from him, a recipe and a dream, and has created a line where now he has employees all over the place. He's distributing it to major grocery stores, Whole Foods. Anyone ever heard of that grocery store, right? And so, without any further ado, I am so proud of this man and so proud to have him be our acquaintance and part of our story. Give me a warm welcome for David Habib, the CEO and founder and dreamer extraordinaire. Welcome to the podcast, David.
Thank you, Meredith. It's a great honor to be here, and you and Skylar are a huge inspiration for me and how I started the business and still today. So it's a great honor to be here, and I appreciate you having me.
So, David, one of the things that I have noticed, like almost across the board, when people, that I do a lot of coaching, and whether it's individuals, leaders, teams, it really doesn't matter. What I find across the board is that we human beings tend to put these kind of like artificial limits on what we believe is safe to imagine that we're capable of achieving. And we kind of balance that with what we believe is safe to believe that life is willing to make possible to us.
Right. Yeah.
And when our big dreams come sometimes crashing up against what we feel like are these reality checks, which some people might call boulders, sometimes we believe, okay, let's play it safe. Let's run and hide. Let's not do something stupid. Let's not embarrass ourselves by going for something. And then every now and then, there are the individuals who realize that it isn't in spite of these boulders that we overcome and we succeed. Often it's thanks to the twist of fate that lands these boulders at our feet, sometimes crashing into us, that we discover just who we are capable of being. So share with us a little bit, maybe any boulders that you encountered, and whether, there were people around you who were saying, David, do you realize how competitive the food industry is? Share with us a little bit of what it was like to be that young man at that table with a dream, and what life looked like.
Absolutely. So I first met you in it would have been in May of 2017, so almost eight years ago, Meredith, which is wild. But really before then, I was working in corporate America, and I was working in the consulting business. I was eating out a lot, and I just really wasn't feeling well. And I realized that a lot of my health concerns were coming from the garbage food that I was eating. So I started to really understand what's in the American packaged foods world, and started to realize that it was all items that my mom personally did not cook with. And that was really that kind of trigger of, okay, I'm missing mom's homemade cooking. I'm missing mom's, homemade sauces and then dressings, and really going back to childhood. My mom was a working mom, but she still made the time to make sure that we had a family dinner, and that was a really important piece of it. So, right about that time, I was kind of missing that. I was missing that tie back to home. Missing mom's extra touch of gathering people around the table, different cultures, different backgrounds, different languages. It didn't matter. Food was such a universal language, and obviously still is today, and where we've chosen to develop our entire livelihood and business around. But that's really, I think, the idea, Meredith, is how do we kind of take the complicated American food diet using ingredients that you have no idea what they are or where they even come from, and how do we only use ingredients that mom has in her pantry? So that was about 2016. That's really where I was, exposed to Skylar's story. I think right about that time is when Skylar faced her boulder. And I'd never known her. I know of mutual friends and things, but I remember reading specifically your posts. They were incredible. You were kind of going through your own journey during that time, which talking about facing boulders. I thought your writing and your just overall story was just so inspiring. And this kind of sounds a little bit morbid, Meredith, but it really had me thinking about my own mortality, right? And I had this kind of idea on this one side here, and then we all have a certain path where death is sure for all of us, right? No one really knows our time. It could be today, it could be in 80 years. We have no idea when the Grim Reaper is going to be calling, I guess.
Oh,
But but ultimately, that was and still is such a motivating factor for me, is really understanding your own mortality and understanding that your time here on Earth is limited. So there's a good quote. It's you have two lives, and the second begins when you only realize that you have one. And like really understanding that typically takes a boulder, right? It takes something major from a loved one. It takes something major from maybe you lost your grandmother or your parent or your spouse or something. And that's really where I think a lot of people really understand that is this person was here and this person is not here now, right? And it's still something that is hard to comprehend. But when you can fully understand that and embrace that in your own life, I think that's where a lot of drive comes personally. And I think reading and being part of Skylar's story in 2016 had a huge impact on my timeline to ultimately start something quickly. Because not knowing Skylar, but knowing amazing things about her. Just about the light and her zest for life and her love for travel, and really everything about her that you had so poetically put down into amazing words. It was such a kind of wake up call, of life is short and boulders happen all the time to everyone, whether it's a literal boulder or smaller boulder or a larger boulder. Everybody's going through something. And God kind of, I think, gets to decide what you're capable of. And sometimes he gives larger boulders to people that he knows who can handle it, right? Because there's a lot of goodness in that, and there's a lot of sometimes through that pain and suffering, something far greater than any of us can ever understand will ultimately come out of that, right? So, yeah.
Yeah. And you've just said so many things. And first of all, I will share with you, and it still, it still makes me emotional when I go back and I recount moments of people stopping me and recognizing me or recognizing us and saying, oh my gosh, you have no idea what you're writing and what's Skylar's story
Mhm.
ignited in me. And when they share, and sometimes it's healing, sometimes it's families getting back together, all kinds of stories. And yours, when you stopped me and said, you know, you, I don't want to sound melodramatic here, but you really ignited in me a passion to follow my dream. That's why I'm sitting here at this table.
Absolutely. Yep.
I will treasure that until my last breath, David. And I think that speaks to, of course, to you, and thank you for sharing that. The gift that sometimes I don't know that we realize that we're giving to other people. It's just an observation, it's just a few words, but
Yep.
just how connected we have the potential of being, and how influential we can be. So I influenced you, perhaps you influenced me by sharing the power of mere words on a page from, a virtual stranger with you until we met. I think that's incredibly powerful. And so let me ask you, so and I really think, and I've emphasized this before, that one of the greatest gifts we have, even though we may not feel it at the time sometimes, is that, God, universe, whatever you are as you are watching this, whatever you call this incredible essence that is life-giving force to
Mhm.
all of us. Um, I believe that one of the greatest gifts that we get from that is that we're not only given mentors and those who inspire, but we're given the anti-mentors.
Mhm.
Anti-mentors are the boulders that come, and we often, when the dust settles, discover that they haven't destroyed us, far from it. They have destroyed the things around us that prevent us from seeing who we really have the capacity to be. And they've made things real in a very crystal clear way, that sometimes when things are all sparkly and fine, that's when we have the rose colored glasses on and really can't see the beauty of things, even in dire circumstances. Um, so, so David, share with me, when, so you, and you have, and I love calling it the zest for life, and which is the flip side of saying, okay, this may sound morbid. The
Right.
of mortality is realizing that, oh yes, but you have the opportunity to be alive. That was something that I really bumped up against with Skylar, ironically, as early as flying on the plane down to Colombia, when I
Right.
make a decision what I was going to make this mean. And
Yep.
I going to make this mean that my unfairly and tragically, my young 22-year-old daughter was going to be ripped from my life experience, and I wouldn't
Right.
experience this with her? Or would I choose to define this as an extraordinary soul who in just 22 years achieved things that many people don't even achieve in 80, simply by
100%.
embracing life and being a yes person?
Mhm.
And I think that that is a critical, it's for you. What I feel like I'm hearing is that you went, whoa, wait a minute. Each moment, that's the one thing I cannot go back, hit the redo button on. Each moment is precious. And so how am I going to show appreciation for the gifts that given me by going out and being that biggest, boldest version of myself? So as you made the decision, took the leap,
Yes.
it must have been terrifying because, again, I mean, having dabbled in something myself in the food industry, aside from the fact of knowing how competitive it is, I also know that there are all kinds of rules and regs and, all these kind of bars you need to jump through in
Yep.
order for things to happen. So, how did you overcome the well-intended advisors?
Right. I would say the School of Hard Knocks was definitely in my history, Meredith. So, part of it is I didn't know anything about food, about packaged foods. I didn't know anything in the consumer packaged goods world. I was interested in packaging design. I was interested in marketing. I was obviously interested in eating and in cleaning up the American aisle. So that's what that kind of passion really drove me. If I knew everything I knew today about packaged foods, I would have never had the courage to do it, right? So I think ultimately ignorance is bliss when you're starting anything. You want to know just enough to make sure that your passions are fueled and that you're inspired, but you really don't want to know too much, because if you know too much, you start to your point, you start to psych yourself out. You start to tell yourself, all the reasons why you shouldn't or couldn't do something. And that's just that's not, I think, advantageous to anyone who's trying to build something, right? So again, from you said it on I mean, you really stated it perfectly. I didn't even know what a distributor was. I didn't know how, items go to grocery stores. I didn't know what food brokers were. I didn't know what a co-packer was, how to produce things, what's the FDA standards, what's the USDA standards, how do you do labeling, how do you do, actual pH. I mean, food is science, right? And when you're bottling things, it's a totally different game than when you're a home chef. So really, Meredith, I would say being 24 years old when I started the business, most everyone took advantage of me and of my age. And, they're like, oh, who's this young kid? Everyone comes in with their mom and their grandma's recipes, and, they don't understand how to actually build a food business. And they were not wrong, right? I didn't have any prior experience or any qualifications to justify that I was going to be successful and ultimately be able to do it. But I did have drive, and I had passion, and I had grit, and I had the ability to get punched many, many times and stand right back up and get punched again. And I think that's a really important lesson just within building anything. Is it's a very lonely journey, very lonely. No one knows exactly what you're going through and all the trials and all the challenges and all the, just especially within the food world, there's another layer of it. When you start building into retail, I mean, there's a whole other level of chargebacks and deductions and just understanding just how the actual food business works. But I think that by learning it and by making most of the mistakes and by figuring things out, you kind of build a muscle, Meredith, over time. And just like any muscle, it has to be trained. And, small business, small problems, big business, big problems. As you get bigger and bigger, your problems last year are very easy compared to the problems that you're solving this year. And my problems next year are going to be much more challenging than my problems this year. So, part of any journey is, you just have to learn, and you have to have the belief in yourself to be able to solve anything. And, ultimately that comes with time. And I think, in America, I love this country. I'm a first generation American. I think what we've been able to do, I would have never been able to do it in any other country for sure. Um, but I also think that America makes entrepreneurship very sexy and glamorous. And, oh, you're running a business, you're sitting on the beach, you're doing whatever. And it's like, that's not reality at all. Business is tough. Entrepreneurship is tough. The truth is yes, I can coordinate my own schedule, but the business really owns my schedule, right? It's on my thought all the time. It's where I spend all of my time, right? So I think that's an important piece of it too, is it's a commitment. And if you're willing to commit to it, just like any other commitments, you will find that there's always light at the end of the tunnel, and that, any dark spot that you're in, that there's a path forward, as long as you have the actual will to keep on carrying on.
Now, I mean, what you just shared is just so rich. So rich. I want to also ask you, in those darkest moments, in those moments of self-doubt, I find that a lot of times the things that really grip us the most, or I don't know how, it's this how hole, as some people would call it. And I think that often the way out of that is not to go searching for the answer to how, but to shift to who. Who can,
Mhm.
who's done it before? Who can advise me? Who can I model? Who can I bring on my team? Is that your experience?
Absolutely. And I tell this to anyone who comes to work here at our company, and part of building a team is such an important piece. It's the most important piece as you're looking to grow and scale. But I tell everyone that we're on the ship together, and that everybody is the driver of their own ship. And part of being a good captain is you have to choose who you need on your boat, and you need to choose who you need to throw overboard as well, right? Because a
Yep.
lot of times we focus too much on those anchors, and we try to impress people who shouldn't even be on our boat, or we're trying to, win someone's affection or attention, or, whatever it is, right? And that's such a distraction, Meredith, to where that becomes the majority of your time. And that's relevant in the business world. If a retailer says no, that's a very challenging thing to get over. And many times, you follow up, you just keep going and going and going. But the reality is it's no, it doesn't mean no, it's just not yet, right? And that's ultimately, how you have to keep driving and keep building forward. So to answer your question, yes, I think everybody is the captain of their own ship, and assembling the right mentors, the right advisors, the right people on your ship is important. But also, sometimes your mentors and advisors don't have the right advice for you either. So really understanding your intuition is so important, and understanding your gut. I mean, there's a lot of wonderful people that I know and that I work with who've given me advice that was not relevant to the situation that I was in. And I
Mhm.
chose to neglect that advice and follow my gut. And in many circumstances, I'm glad that I ultimately did that, right? You just have to understand again that everybody, all of us, we're all the captains of our ship. And it's so important that you gotta get the right people on there, and you really need to act fast when someone should be on your boat.
I love that, and it's interesting because it ties into kind of an analogy that I have, where I tell people that you cannot miss the boat because you are the boat, but
Yep,
you need to learn how to captain the thing, you know,
exactly.
for
Yep.
sure. For sure. So let me ask you, um, are there, how would you say that this experience has enriched you, enlarged you? And keeping in mind, I have a terminology for what you just highlighted, that a lot of what was fueling the ship was that I call it intuition, which is that harmony between intuition and
Mm.
very clear intention. And when you have intuition, then you can be unstoppable and discover things that you, in some cases, don't even believe exist when you start. So, how
That's right.
this, who say you are today that maybe you, if you had to speak to that little 24-year-old version of yourself as this future version of yourself, knowing what you know, what would you tell that 24-year-old that they have to look forward to?
I mean, it's really amazing to just think of the overall impact. So today we ship to 25,000 stores. We also export to 11 countries, and we're a small team here of we have 23 people here in Clearwater, Florida. So just thinking of what we've been able to do in 7.5 years is amazing. But I tell our team all the time that we're in second grade and that we're just getting started. So we have a long road ahead of us. You know, we have big goals and big ambitions to become a well-known household brand name. And you know, Campbell's and Coca-Cola and you know, all of these household brand names didn't do it in an 8-year period, right? So I think it goes back to that long-term build. But that's really what I would tell my 24-year-old self, is that good things take time. You know, I think when you're 24 and when you're ambitious and when you're building a business, you know, again, I didn't know what I don't know. So, you know, we're knocking on Costco's door, we're knocking on Walmart's door, and we're going to all these large retailers that we have great partnerships with today. But, you know, we weren't ready for those opportunities back then, Meredith. So you really have to embrace the process. And you know, I think everything's about that kind of long-term build, while also, to your point, that balance, right? You got to have that sense of urgency. You know, you can't always be like, oh well, we'll worry about this in 10 years when like the time is right. It's like, no, you know, the time is probably right now, and if it's not right now, you're going to learn and it'll be right in a 24-month period or so. So I think you know, that long-term perspective is really important. And I think that that's just a good lesson for all of us, is that good things take time. And you know, I love what obviously you've built here, and we're talking 8 years of just, you know, your own build here, but really it's, I'm sure, decades and decades of experiences and work that has got you up to this point. And I think if I could leave with you know, one message on this topic, I would say in life is that many people, especially in your own circles too, they all want to be part of the outcome, but they don't want to be part of the process. And
Yeah.
it's a very sobering message to fully understand, because so many times, you know, again, people only see the shininess. They see, you know, the awards and the business and, you know, all of the other things, but they don't understand the process, your process, right? Of what it took to get to where you are today. And I can guarantee you that nobody else can have the courage or the faith to live in your shoes and deal with what you've dealt with, because it was built for you, right? Just like, you know, just like all of our experiences are as unique as all of us are, right? But yeah, I think that's a really important lesson that I hope to share.
That is so wise, and I love it. So I know that your time is incredibly valuable. So I want to shift us into three questions
Yeah.
that ask all of my guests. And so, what the first question is, I want you to envision that we are generations in the future. And for whatever reason, access to a lot of the wisdom on the topic of how to choose to live has disappeared. And
Mhm.
so now all of a sudden people have access to you for three gems that you might,
Mhm.
based on what you have lived so far, on the topic of how to choose to live in a way that they can look back on their life and feel that their life was epic. What might those three things be?
The first one that comes to mind is from one of my favorite movies, Shawshank Redemption, and it goes back to our theme here, but it's to get busy living or get busy dying, right? And I think that that ties into our theme today is, too many times we're focused in on the anchors, right? And we're focused in on those boulders. And when you really get focused on living, and when you realize that your time here is finite, and that you have a limited amount of time on this earth, so you better make the most of it. I think that that's a really important piece of it. The second is that you're only limited by your imagination. I think everything that's around us, in your background, in this room, in your business, everything was someone's mind at some point, right? And that, to
Yeah.
me, I tell to our team here a lot. I think it's such a cool thing. Like, you think of J.K. Rowling and the world that she's created with Harry Potter. I mean, that's all her
Yes.
her 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 mind, right? And she's created this entire world of music and movies and books and theme parks, and that's all someone's mind. So to me, that's very inspiring, and I think in generations to come, that will never change. Is you're only limited by your imagination. And then three, I would say arguably one of the most important is to believe. You have to believe in yourself. You have to. They don't talk enough about self-confidence and about self-esteem, and you know, it's such a challenging world, and there's too many people in the world who get their satisfaction by putting others down. From personal experience, all of us have, and that starts from being a kid, right?
Right.
There's good teachers and there's bad teachers. There's good parents and there's bad parents. There's, so many different experiences that everyone experiences from as early as their memory can go back
Yes.
into archives to now. And I think a lot of what people deal with stems from childhood trauma, right? I think being I'm very, very fortunate to have had the most amazing parents and an amazing upbringing and wonderful schools. And I realize that that's not the case for everyone, right? But at the end of the day, that same belief in yourself, regardless of your circumstances or background, is so important. And that's really the most important thing I would say is you are your best friend and your own worst enemy, and you have to choose who you want to be every single day, right?
Woo, those are so amazing. And it's interesting. If you're listening to this, I want you to note all three of those. And specifically the second one, David, that you mentioned is an integral part of my 100 Days of Epic book, where I talk about how, kind of to your point, the one gift you can give yourself that will change your life immediately is the commitment and decision to learn how to be the sovereign of your own mind. Because when you can
Right.
be sovereign of your own mind, you become the sovereign of your life experience and what you make life mean. And one of the three elements that to pursue the artistries, the masteries to do that, I call it having an elf in the room instead of an elephant in the room.
Mm.
E standing for, first and foremost, the ability to envision, which is
Vision.
imagination, because we have been trained kind of that the only legit use of our imagination sometimes when we get to be adult is to worry, to fear, to self-doubt. Being prepared,
Mhm.
it's being prepared for the worst scenario, right?
Yep.
And then the other two would be the language that you use, and to your point, whether you're choosing to show up as your soulmate
Right.
or your worst enemy. What are you going to give track
Mhm.
to? And then the final is focus. Are you going to focus on the presence of what you want, or the all that evidence of the lack of the presence of what you want? So
Yeah.
gems of wisdom, David. Fantastic. So, second question.
Yes.
I believe that we have one goal and one goal only, and that is to be taking our last breath, whenever that is, saying, oh my gosh, this was freaking epic. I hope I have the chance to do this. So, from where you sit right now, what can you look back upon and really be able to say, thanks to this, I can, even if my last breath is tomorrow or today, I could still say mission accomplished.
I think when you're operating a business, it's really about building others and realizing that it's a living, breathing thing. And not only is it providing for families and futures and homes and meals for everybody, but it has a greater impact. I tell our team here we can get in the nitty gritty weeds of the business all the time, but we're shipping millions and millions of jars a year and helping families to save time and helping them to eat and feel better and ultimately helping them to feed their families with the same ingredients that my mom cooked. There's no added sugars, there's no excess sodium, no phosphoric acid and xanthan gum and all these weird things that give us all heartburn, right? So I think that's the really cool piece of when you can build something, and when you can ultimately solve people's problems through some type of solution that was in your own head. I think that's pretty cool.
That is amazing, not to mention how many of our family memories happen around the dinner
The
table.
dinner table, that's right. Yeah.
Amazing to give that to people. So for even if it's a fleeting moment,
Yeah.
how these can just disappear. That moment when that food touches your mouth and you have that moment where you're like, oh my gosh, this is so
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
Nothing else in the world matters at that
Right.
point.
Yeah.
Oh, it's incredible. All right. So third question is, David, if you were to discover that big boulder is a coming at some point in the next 2 years, what might you risk doing between now and then that maybe you haven't, with all that you've done, you haven't yet had the courage to say, to quote a song, it's now or never? What might that big, like, ooh, this makes me uncomfortable even to think of, be?
Hmm. I'm a pretty big risk taker, so most of the items that I've wanted to do, I feel like I've accomplished so far, but I've always wanted to do the Camino, Meredith, which is the way. It's the walk from the Pyrenees to a Portugal, and it's like a 33 day walk. I've always wanted to do that, and time is the biggest boulder for me, Meredith, is I tend to want to do a little bit too much and not understand how to rest well. So I think as in order to prepare for the next boulders in life, you got to also prepare and take care of yourself, right? And I think that's something that I learned last year for sure. After just building 120-hour weeks, the body
Yes.
and the mind can only take so much, and you can only give what you have, right? So
Right.
I think that's an important philosophy, is as exciting as life can be, and as much as you want to carpe diem and
Yes.
seize every single day, there is wisdom and there is truth in also resting, and that's
Yes.
something that I have yet to learn. So
So, note to those of you who are watching this, there are a couple big things here that before I share with you where you can find this amazing sauce for yourself and follow David, is first of all, yes, there's when we breathe, there's an inhale and there's an exhale. And once we inhale, we can't just keep inhaling,
Exactly.
or there's no more breath to be had. And that's a
Right.
right, that we're going to be able to go further, faster when we're breathing deeply. In other words, when we've had that opportunity to kind of stop the commotion and allow the flow.
Exactly.
Motion, allow the flow. We will. It seems counterintuitive, but we need both elements, right? We're in a duality for a reason. And then what I want you to just have one more comment for. You said I tend to be a big risk taker, and
Mhm.
the thing that I've also noticed, that it's interesting, your unspoken definition of risk, I think, is one that propels you forward. So to me, knowing what I know about you and seeing you, to you, risk is still calculated. You assess it, and you step into this one with a very firm belief that it is possible. I can
Mhm.
do it. It will be worth it. And here's the really, really, really important part, that the risk, the cost of inaction, in other words, the COI, is far riskier investing in than investing in something, which I'll get data either way. So
Yep.
that makes the ROI, the return on that investment, far safer than the person who says, you know what, I'm going to just analyze a little more. I'm going to prepare
Yep.
a little more. I'm not quite ready to
Exactly.
take action. Is
Mhm.
that, I mean, I have seen and observed and felt myself that it sounds like a great idea to figure it all out, get it flawless in your mind, and
Mhm.
get ready to take action. Speak to that,
Right.
David.
Yeah, I mean it's that paralysis by analysis, right? And I forget who said this, but not acting is choosing something too, right? And
Yeah,
that's far worse and far damaging, far more damaging than trying something, failing quickly, moving on, right? So I think we have such a complicated world, and there's so much noise, and there's
yeah,
so much. So I mean, just in like the product world, like it's a product polluted world. I mean, there's literally 500 of anything you can ever imagine in like every single category, right? And
yes,
just I mean, noise and traffic, and we're just busy, 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 and social media and meetings, and it's just go, go, go all the time. And there's something to where when you can sit back and
yeah,
be like, if you put most people in like a silent room today, and they're not allowed to have technology, they're not allowed to have like any like sensory things, like people will go crazy, right? Because we're all
look at
so yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah, I mean, we're all so wired all the time. Um, so yeah, I think that in order to solve the paralysis by analysis, it goes back to you have to go back to being able to give yourself what you ultimately need, mentally, emotionally, physically, making sure that you're walking, you're outside, you are working out.
yeah,
Because again, if you don't take care of yourself, and if you don't take care of your health, how are you going to take care of others, right?
for sure. And kind of to your point, what are you going to give traction to? I think sometimes people don't even think about when they end up saying, oh my gosh, yeah, but it would be too hard to change, or it's
Yeah.
hard, or it's hard to get myself to do that. When if you really look at it, you really think about it, isn't it much harder to stay stuck where you
Yep.
know comfortable? So
Exactly.
iteration is definitely part of the recipe. I mean, I would guess that as you've developed your new wonderful flavors, which we'll talk about in a moment, there was a little bit of iteration, and that
Of
if you,
course.
okay, these are the ingredients, we're not changing them no matter what, and that we have to throw it out if it's not perfect in this first rendition, you wouldn't have the success that you have today. So I think, and you can't iterate if you don't get started,
That's
right?
right. Exactly right.
I love it. So, David, what is your most popular flavor, or is there
Yeah.
now?
Our marinara is still our best seller. We have a line of natural pasta sauces, salad dressings, condiments today. We do white sauces, pizza sauces. We'll be launching with some better for you natural cooking wines. That's our next category. Most of the cooking wines in the marketplace have a bunch of ingredients that your mom doesn't have. And then
Wow.
we also have some protein pastas launching early next year as well.
Oh, that's so exciting. And in fact,
Yeah.
even my dog's excited. I don't know.
Yeah.
Ooh, that sounds
Yeah.
tasty and delicious. So, what
Yeah.
your personal favorite? If someone has never, first of all, I'll let you share the name. It's a fantastic name. And
Yes.
did you come up with this name?
Yeah. So Yo Mama's Foods is our company name, really inspired by the idea that no one makes better food than your own mama. But really, Meredith, consumer packaged goods for the most part is a pretty boring aisle. It's a pretty boring category. So when I went into pasta sauce and salad dressings and pizza sauce, I couldn't remember any of those brand names. They just didn't stick with me because they were just boring. So when I thought about how do we encompass mom, how do we encompass fun, but how do we also make something really memorable and something from a marketing perspective that you can do a lot with, and that's something that no one will ever forget. That's what led me to Yo Mama. So, um, yeah.
To your point, the first time I heard it, I remembered it.
Yeah.
Almost like right up there with that whole sign of like, forget about it, right?
Right, exactly. Yep.
Well, so if someone, first of all, I'm super excited about the new lines. That's
Oh,
amazing.
thank you.
So, but if someone has never tried Yo Mama
Yes.
products,
Mhm.
what are maybe what's a personal favorite? Where should they start?
Yes, I would say that the tomato basil, roasted garlic, or marinara pasta sauces are pantry staples and great classics. If you like garlic, the roasted garlic is fantastic. If you can't digest garlic or onions, we also have a sensitive marinara for you. That's actually a big trend now, is a lot of people can't eat garlic or onions. So we've also built a wonderful pasta sauce for those customers as well. I mean, our buffalo sauce is fantastic. Our mild buffalo, excellent. I love our Greek dressing, and the Asian sesame dressing is a great marinade. I use it for, chicken, fish, rice, broccoli. That's another classic. We also have great pizza sauces, white sauce. I mean, honestly, you should just try everything. So if you want to try, you can use code welcome20 on our website. You can also find us through Amazon, samsclub.com, walmart.com, costco.com, and in stores at most of your grocery stores, from Publix, Whole Foods, Sprouts, Harris Teeter, Meyer, HEB, wherever you do your grocery shopping. You should find us in the pasta sauce or salad dressing aisle, and Kroger and Walmart.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Repeat that code again one more time.
Yes, welcome 20
I
on yomamasfoods.com. You'll get 20% off, and if you subscribe for emails, you'll have some fun holiday promotions coming your way.
Ooh, all right. I love it. And David, last but not least, if they want to follow you on social media, follow Yo Mama Foods, what are the
Yes.
to
Yes.
heading to?
Our Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, LinkedIn is at Yo Mama's Foods, YOMAMASFOODS. And then if you want to connect with me personally, it's David T. Habib on LinkedIn.
I love it. Woohoo! So, David, thank you so much. Speaking of the holiday season, when we are recording this, I can imagine you were slammed. Thank you so much. And time being so precious to you. You are so precious to me. And I know that now you're super precious to my leaders and to my listeners and to the people that have not even discovered Yo Mama yet. So, so much for being here.
Thank you, Meredith.
if you are listening to this, and I know you thought of at least one person who you're like, oh my gosh, they need to hear this, right? Someone who is dreaming a dream or just thinking of doing something that feels a little bit risky for them, please share this episode with them and go pick out your favorite 1, 2, 3, 4, or 10 bottles of all the various Yo Mama product and gift them, share them, stocking stuffer. And of course, be sure to stick around for the bonus tip at the end of this based on this particular episode. And David, thank you again. Much continued growth and success and ease, a little bit of time.
That's right.
And we
Thank
love
you, Meredith.
dearly. Thank you so
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's a great honor. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, everybody. Bye for now. David is the epitome of someone who took a big risk, took a chance, but believed in himself and believed in his capability of figuring things out. So, in that spirit, today's bonus tip is all about figuring out where have you been pushing the analysis paralysis button. My challenge to you, my opportunity to you today is to take even 5 minutes and get in a real quiet place and get something you can write down on, or even if it's on your computer. Although, note to self, when you actually physically write something, studies show that it connects a little more deeply with the subconscious part of your brain. So keep that in mind. But take 5 minutes and really do a self-assessment and see if you can come up with 1, 2, or even 3 areas or 3 things that you might be, to be perfectly frank, overthinking. What is some action that you haven't taken? Remember what David said in there? He quoted the quote where even if you're choosing not to take action, that's still a form of action. That's still a choice. And T, of course, in grit, in my acronym, stands for the realization that making a transformation is as simple as making a different choice. So write down 1, 2, or 3 actions or pursuits, or maybe even it's your big dream that you can just dive in. Again, I'll call you back to David's story. Same as my story, is that becoming an accidental fill in the blank, it can be magical. And when you go for it, when you take fast action, smart, fast action, well thought of, calculated risks, right? But when you take quick action, then you get immediate data. So you can course correct, course correct, course correct. Just like a plane flying from New York to San Francisco is constantly course correcting the entire way of the journey rather than staying and getting determined to come up with the perfect flight plan and then encountering gusts of wind that take it way off course and scratching your head and going, hey, why am I not in San Francisco? It's course correcting. And you've heard me say over and over again that iteration is a non-negotiable part of a plan. You must plan to iterate, plan to fine tune. That's part of the magic. That's where it works. And so great, whatever data you get back is going to be helpful. And then you are not going to be the same version of yourself that you were even a moment ago who made that original choice, because now you're that version of you with this new data. So you have the potential for things to show up differently. So your mission today is to get rid of the analysis paralysis and definitely get rid of the temptation to be one of the 90% of the people who have these big dreams but never even get started because they talk themselves out of it. So whether it's making a phone call that you've known you should make or wanted to make, or you were too scared to make, whether it's something small like that, or whether it's a big dream like David's of saying, what if? Right? And not worrying about the hows, understanding that when you take consistent action, the hows and the whos will reveal themselves. So I'm Meridith Alexander. Be sure to hit the subscribe button. Be sure to like this episode and, of course, share it if it resonated with you or you can think of someone who might resonate with this. And as always, I read each and every comment, so be sure to leave one. And until next time, in the next episode, go out and do something epic.